War has erupted again in the Strait of Hormuz. Just this morning, Iranian vessels attempted to break through the United States naval blockade, and their attempt ended in absolute disaster. American forces swiftly disabled the ships, leaving them completely incapacitated and unable to move. And now Iranian officials are screaming foul, claiming the United States is deliberately sabotaging diplomatic negotiations. U.S. military forces conducted fresh airstrikes this morning, targeting multiple empty oil tankers that were trying to breach the blockade and return to Iranian ports. This latest military action follows yesterday's devastating attacks where American forces systematically destroyed Iranian missile and drone storage facilities positioned along the coastline of the Strait of Hormuz. So before we dive deep into this morning's dramatic events, let's quickly review what exactly happened last night, because the scale of these strikes is genuinely significant. On the map you're seeing, you can identify all the specific regions the United States targeted yesterday. This includes Bandar Abbas Port, an extremely important strategic location for Iranian naval operations, and Keshem Island, which Iran has been actively using to monitor and track all activities throughout the Strait of Hormuz. Then, of course, there's Bandar Kangan and Garuk, both critical infrastructure locations. According to the official military statement, American strikes on Thursday hit Iranian drone launch facilities, coastal defense cruise missile installations, and radar systems. What's particularly interesting here is that the United States initially had absolutely no plans for conducting these strikes because they were actively respecting the ceasefire agreement. However, when American warships approached the Strait of Hormuz on routine transit, Iran immediately began launching missiles, deploying drones, and sending swarms of small attack boats directly at them. This Iranian aggression prompted the American response, with U.S. forces carrying out what they're calling defensive strikes, specifically designed to prevent future attacks on commercial shipping and U.S. naval vessels. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio explaining precisely why these strikes were absolutely necessary. Listen to this exchange carefully. Well, I guess, but the point is, if there's not much ceasing and then firing because well, you should ask that of the Iranians. Don't ask me. We didn't fire first. They fired on us. My point is, if you fire at a U.S. Navy ship, what are we supposed to do? Say, oh, there's a ceasefire. We're not going to shoot down your drone? That's a stupid question. That's a stupid position to take. Of course we fired back at them. They were shooting at us. That's what I would expect us to do. Only stupid countries don't shoot back when you're shot at, and we're not a stupid country. When asked about red lines, Rubio continued, "The red line is clear. They threaten Americans, they're going to get blown up. I mean, that's how much clearer can you be than that? If you fire on us, if you are a missile launching operator sitting there and you fire a missile at the United States and we saw you fire it, we're going to hit you. Of course we are. Who doesn't do that? Unless you want to get your ship sunk, we're not going to let our ships get sunk by the Iranians with their little drones that they're firing. You know, they don't have a navy anymore, but they bring out these little Boston whaler fishing boats and they try to swarm you. We're going to blow those boats up if they're coming towards our vessels. I don't know if that's a red line, but I hope they know it is by now. So if I were one of these Iranians on a fast attack boat and they tell you your mission is to go after a U.S. destroyer, you're probably not going to survive. I think that's a red line." Now, here's the genuinely funniest part of this entire situation. All this time, Iranian politicians and officials have been consistently stating publicly, hey, we don't want to negotiate. We're winning this war decisively. And then the absolute second the United States attacks their meager naval assets, and they don't really have a functioning navy anymore, just small boats, as Marco Rubio accurately mentioned, plus some drone and missile launch sites. The instant America strikes back, Iranians are suddenly saying, hey guys, I thought we were negotiating here. Why are you attacking us during diplomatic negotiations? This is exactly the tone that came through in the Iranian foreign minister's statement released immediately after these attacks. Take a look at what he said. Every time a diplomatic solution is on the table, the U.S. opts for a reckless military adventure. Is it a crude pressure tactic or the result of a spoiler once again duping the president into another quagmire? Whatever the cause is, the outcome is the same. Iranians never bow to pressure. He also added in an image posted with his statement, "The CIA is wrong. Our missile inventory and launcher capacity are not at 75% compared to February 28th. The correct figure is at 120%. As for our readiness to defend our people, it's at 1,000%. Now, I'm genuinely not sure what their actual missile capacity really is. I'm absolutely certain intelligence agencies possess far more accurate knowledge than a random YouTuber commenting on these events. But my question is extremely simple. If Iran's missile capacity is genuinely at 120%, meaning they supposedly have more missiles now than when the war initially started, why was Iran dramatically slowing down their missile launches toward the end of active combat operations? Why were they conserving missiles if their capacity was supposedly increasing every single day? It's straightforward logic. The words coming out of Iranian official statements are simply not matching the actual actions they were carrying out during the war itself. Personally speaking, I place far less weight on what Iranian officials are publicly saying and much more weight on what they're actually doing operationally. Then after that defiant statement last night, we also witnessed Iranians attacking the United Arab Emirates once again. This marks the second or possibly third time Iran has directly attacked the UAE since the ceasefire agreement officially began. Fortunately, all the missiles and drones that Iran fired were successfully intercepted by UAE air defenses. But falling debris did end up injuring 3 civilians, according to the UAE Defense Ministry's official statement. They also pointed out that since this war began, UAE air defense systems have intercepted roughly 500 ballistic missiles, 30 cruise missiles, and over 2,200 drones, resulting in more than 200 injuries from debris and impacts. On the flip side of this equation, American air defense systems are holding up remarkably, incredibly well under sustained pressure. How do we know this with certainty? Well, every single country throughout the Gulf region is purchasing these exact air defense systems at absolutely record pace. Take a look at this development. Secretary of State Marco Rubio just approved $25 billion in emergency weapons sales to Bahrain, Israel, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. That's triple the $8.6 billion initially disclosed publicly. The massive package includes an enormous number of Patriot missile interceptors, though delivery timelines could stretch years into the future due to severely limited American production capacity. There's genuinely more global demand for these systems than we currently have manufacturing supply to meet. For Iran, on the other hand, the bad news just absolutely doesn't stop coming. Take a look at what Central Command just publicly released this morning. There are currently more than 70 oil tankers that U.S. military forces are actively preventing from either entering or leaving Iranian ports. These commercial vessels collectively have the capacity to transport over 166 million barrels of Iranian oil, worth an estimated $13 billion in potential revenue. Because of the American naval blockade, Iran is missing out on absolutely billions of dollars in desperately needed oil revenue at precisely the moment they need that income most critically. And of course, on top of lost money, another thing Iran desperately needs right now is additional oil storage capacity. They want some of these empty tankers currently sitting in international waters to return to Iranian ports so Iran can utilize them as floating oil storage depots, meaning they can load crude oil onto these tankers and just let it sit there indefinitely. This strategic move gives Iran much more breathing room operationally, and they don't have to shut down their oil field production if they can simply acquire more storage capacity. Otherwise, if they're forced to actually shut in the oil fields themselves, that means they could lose out on enormous amounts of money and catastrophic oil revenue losses stretching into the future, because restarting shut-in oil fields is extremely expensive and technically complex. Well, guess what? The United States blockade is specifically targeting this exact situation. Just this morning, 2 vessels, two oil tankers were actively trying to get back into an Iranian port facility so they could load up on crude oil for storage. But unfortunately for Iran, they were completely unable to get past the American naval blockade. Take a look at this official military statement. U.S. forces disabled motor tanker Sea Star 3 and motor tanker Sarita on May 8th, prior to both vessels entering an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman in violation of the ongoing U.S. blockade. Central Command enforced blockade measures against two Iranian-flagged unladen oil tankers attempting to pull into an Iranian port. A U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet from USS George H.W. Bush disabled both tankers after firing precision munitions directly into their smokestacks, preventing non-compliant ships from entering Iran. In fact, I believe this is actually the operational footage they released that you're seeing on your screen right now. And on top of those two vessels, U.S. forces also disabled Iranian-flagged motor tanker Hassana on May 6th as it attempted to sail to an Iranian port in the Gulf of Oman. Again, they utilized an FA-18 Super Hornet from USS Abraham Lincoln, disabling the unladen oil tanker's rudders by firing several rounds from a 20-millimeter cannon. All three vessels are no longer transiting to Iran and are effectively dead in the water. For the Iranian regime, this represents a genuinely major crisis because they desperately need these tankers to return, even when they're completely empty, so they can load them up with crude oil for storage. And it appears the situation is becoming so desperate inside the country that they may actually be resorting to simply dumping crude oil directly into the ocean. We already have some preliminary evidence suggesting this is potentially happening. But before we examine that satellite imagery, just a quick reminder for everyone watching to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button down below. It genuinely makes a massive difference in how many people ultimately watch this video through YouTube's algorithm, and that helps us out tremendously in continuing to cover these developments. Now let's look at the satellite evidence. A suspected major oil spill has been detected near Iran's Karg Island export hub. According to satellite imagery independently reviewed by Reuters, researchers are saying that the visible oil slick covered roughly 45 square kilometers west of Karg Island, the terminal facility that handles approximately 90% of all Iranian oil exports. The cause of this massive spill remains officially unknown, as tensions continue escalating throughout the Gulf amid ongoing clashes between U.S. and Iranian military forces and the continuing naval blockade. Now, I'm absolutely not an oil industry expert whatsoever, and I'm genuinely not certain whether this spill was an accidental mistake or a deliberate action. The only thing I know for certain is that Iran is getting extremely close to completely running out of storage capacity, and they desperately need some method to relieve that building pressure. They need some mechanism to release that pressure somehow, and now we're suddenly seeing this massive spill. Again, just to be fair and present the counter-argument to my own theory, there has been substantial fighting and military action occurring throughout the Strait of Hormuz region. So this could absolutely be an accidental spill resulting from combat damage. Only time will definitively tell us what this really represents. If we continue observing more and more crude oil appearing in ocean waters around Iranian facilities, I think we can reasonably conclude this wasn't merely an accident. This may represent a desperate new strategy for Iran, implemented specifically so they don't have to shut down their oil field production entirely. Now, to fight back against all these mounting pressures, Iran has actively tried attacking or even physically seizing commercial ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz or operating in the Persian Gulf. But unfortunately for Tehran, even that aggressive strategy is not proceeding according to their plans. Yesterday, Iran attacked what they thought was a legitimate target oil tanker, but it turned out to be a Chinese-owned oil tanker. And now today, China is genuinely upset about this incident. Take a look at their official statement. China said its nationals were among the crew of an oil tanker attacked this week near the Strait of Hormuz. Foreign Ministry spokesperson confirmed that Chinese crew members were on board the vessel struck by Iran. As of now, no casualties among the crew have been reported. Beijing warned that the escalating hostilities between Iran and the United States are severely disrupting one of the most critical maritime corridors globally. China is deeply concerned that a large number of vessels and crew members have been stranded in the strait for months. And guess what happened? This morning, the situation became dramatically worse. The Iranian Navy just physically seized a Chinese-owned oil tanker operating in the Sea of Oman. According to Iranian state media, which actually posted video footage of this entire boarding operation, the oil tanker seized was named Ocean Joy. This particular vessel was actually carrying Iranian crude oil when it was boarded and seized by the Iranian Navy. And on top of that revealing detail, it's owned by a Shanghai-based company called Ocean Kudo Shipping, which has actually been officially sanctioned by the United States government. So I genuinely have no idea what's actually happening here strategically. I don't understand if this is simply Iran trying to project strength by seizing one of their own contracted tankers, or if there's something else happening behind the scenes that we don't currently know about. But what Iran is doing here is objectively positive for United States interests. They're seizing a sanctioned tanker that's owned by a Chinese company and a vessel that's actively carrying Iranian crude oil. Extremely suspicious circumstances, but I'm not certain what's genuinely occurring as of this moment. To me personally, this just appears like Iran desperately flexing fake muscles by seizing one of their own affiliated ships purely to send a message to other tankers and cargo vessels saying, hey, don't attempt to transit the Strait of Hormuz, otherwise we can take over your ship just like we commandeered this vessel. This represents the Iranian method of telling the international community the Strait of Hormuz is under Iranian control. It's under Iranian sovereignty. It's effectively part of Iranian territorial waters, when in reality, that's absolutely not something other countries throughout the world, not just the United States, but other European nations, and of course numerous Asian countries, are willing to accept under international maritime law. Listen to Secretary of State Marco Rubio discussing precisely this issue. He explains he doesn't understand why anybody globally would not be supportive of keeping international waterways open. And he's absolutely right to question that. But here's the more fundamental problem we're facing. Iran now explicitly claims that they own outright, that they possess the sovereign right to control an international waterway. They're claiming they have the legal right to control it unilaterally. What is the international community going to do about that claim? Is the world genuinely prepared to accept that Iran now controls an international waterway? Because if the world is actually prepared to accept that precedent, then everyone better be ready, because there are approximately 10 other countries minimum that are immediately going to start doing the exact same thing with international waterways near their territories or coastal waters. That's a completely unacceptable precedent they're attempting to normalize. So if the answer from the international community is no, we categorically don't think Iran should be able to unilaterally control the Strait of Hormuz, then the next logical question becomes directed at everyone. What specifically are you going to do about it? What concrete actions will you take? Now, to genuinely understand why Iran is behaving the specific way it's behaving right now, we need to go back historically and examine how Iran arrived at where it is today strategically and psychologically. That doesn't simply mean going back to 1979, when the Islamic Revolution dramatically took place and transformed the country. In fact, we actually need to go significantly further back in history to when the Qajar dynasty was ruling Iran throughout the 19th century, and carefully examine how the decisions the ruling class made back then continue affecting Iran to this very day. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're doing in our comprehensive multi-part podcast series that just released today. So if you're someone genuinely interested in the deep historical background of Iran and understanding how we got to where we are today, definitely go check it out. You can watch it by clicking the links in the description below, or you can access it by clicking the end screen appearing on your screen right now. Basically, just click the video that's appearing on your screen and you'll go directly there.